All right, we're back. How is your echo now?
We'll see in about 3 seconds. So I think that's about how long it took for me to hear it.
Oh, let's hope.
Sounds good.
We're good now?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, why don't you introduce yourself then while I try to resort my desktop here.
That sounds great. I'm Jim. I'm from Bald Move. I swear my podcast doesn't normally have audio issues. But yeah, we cover we have a podcast, me and my co-host Aaron, who you might have seen on this stream last week. We have the podcast Waffle Potty, cover Severance.
How did that name come about exactly?
We try to come up with the dumbest possible names for our shows. And I think Aaron came up with that one. And it was so stupid that we all laughed and we said, we definitely can't have that be the name. And we came up with nothing better. So that became the name.
Gotcha.
And yeah, we cover Severance. I also cover a lot of other stuff. We just got done covering Silo a couple weeks ago. And, we're going to be covering, I think the new, oh my God, name's escaping me. Charlie Cox, Daredevil, Born Again.
Yeah.
Gonna be covering that, Yellow Jackets, a lot of that stuff. So that's what I do.
And you guys didn't do the first season of Severance when it aired. I remember we were just getting to know each other at the time, and you were just getting into it whenever I was talking to you. And so you guys went back and did a rewatch right before this, right?
Yeah, we covered all 10 episodes, episode by episode. Did a podcast for each.
Yeah, so you guys were, it was definitely you did it like right up until the moment. So you came into this ready to go. You weren't, that 3-year break didn't really have a big effect on you guys.
No, we refreshed our memories.
Sorry, I'm just putting a thumbnail together here for the new one.
Oh yeah, you got to remake the whole thing, don't you?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, not the whole thing, but yeah, I had to delete the other one because that's what people are going to link to, and then put something in its place. So, all right, episode 2, we get to spend time with the Audis, and I guess before we get into that, I just wanted to say, because Aaron was here last week, you weren't here for the any part of this. Is there anything from that you want to bring up before we go into the real world?
Yeah, I really appreciated that they didn't jump. Watching these 2 episodes back to back, I was like, oh man, when I watched that first episode, I really wanted to see the exact continuation, right? Like what happened with Mark after he shouted that? What happened with Helly after she shouted her stuff? And I felt like a little twinge of disappointment that we didn't get to see that right away. But watching this second episode, I'm like, oh, I see exactly why they did that. The suspense is so much heavier the second episode because you didn't see that stuff in the first one.
Yep. I think so. Yeah, I had the same impression. And I mean, of course, they're part 1 and part 2, and for a show that is, actually split into 2 different storylines with the same characters playing 2 different roles, that makes a whole lot of sense when you think about it, the way that it all fits together. I saw earlier how people had spliced the trip down the elevators together to show how they matched up. So that was pretty cool to see how that all worked. As far as I like, we're going to hit on everything. But I think the one I wanted to talk to, there's 2 things that popped up to me, or I've been thinking about since I made my video, which, it's been out for a while now. And I think they're both one's about Dylan and one is about Mark. And so I thought we would talk about Audi Dylan first, because this was the first time we saw him, for any significant amount of time. And I thought it was interesting because with so many other characters, it's pretty striking the difference between the two, and for different reasons. And Dylan's I thought was pretty interesting because of the way he is inside. It's kind of hard to imagine how that would flip, on the outside. And I really enjoyed this job interview. But then when I thought about it after the fact, it seems like he really kind of in particular, he really sort of excels in the Severance environment compared to how he does on the outside, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a lot about confidence, and honestly, the inexperience that he has as an innie makes him feel more confident. Success he's seen there, because you look at his Audi seems like he has not had much success in his career, right? He's got a whole bunch of tip jobs. Yeah. So Innie doesn't have that baggage. And I feel like Dylan might have been a confident guy and a few things didn't go his way and it kind of beat him down maybe a little bit. And beat that out of him. And now as an Innie, he gets a fresh start.
Yeah, that was one of the big things I've been thinking about. I saw a lot of comments where people were pointing out how difficult it would be to go get a job after working on a severed floor, not just because of the reason that he had here, where this guy obviously is just put off by the whole situation, but like you literally don't work for those years, know, your Innie does. So you don't have any experience, any work ethic, anything, you know what I mean? Like you basically been lounging for that period of time,
What have you been doing?
It doesn't make you like a great candidate for a job after you go through that process.
Yeah, especially a guy like Irv or Bert who've been there seemingly a long time.
Yeah.
Those guys, don't have any prospects on the outside, I wouldn't think, especially their ages, there's also already a bias against older workers anyway. So man, to not have any experience for like a decade. It's a lot like me if I were trying to go out and get a real job. I don't have any experience. I've been podcasting for 10 years.
Yeah. Like you just have to hope somebody thinks that's cool and that just wants to hire you because they want to hear your stories or something, not because they think that it would actually, transfer over as a transferable skill or whatever.
Yeah. That's the other thing. I mean, if he finds the right position, he could get hired and they'll just be like, what was it like in there? Tell us about your Innie.
Yeah. And he would be like, we're actually completely cut off from each other. I don't know anything about him. It would basically be Chris Walken's speech to the retirement party,
Yeah. But Dylan would make something awesome up, right? On the fly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I liked about the way this one played out, because he really does get in, like he does. There are shades of the confidence from his from his Innie as he's talking to this guy, and then it just sort of all just gets dashed away. And I thought it was a really nice like detail how he goes a little bit too far when he makes a joke about doors. It's like, yeah, we can talk about how we love them, but let's not bring them into the jokes that we're throwing around here.
Yeah. Make light of the doors.
Yeah. But yeah, I this guy that plays him, like if you go and look him up, they don't resemble each other really at all. Like they did a great job of making these two almost look like mirror images in this scene here.
Yeah. So much to the point where I thought when I saw this in the trailer that this might be something within the severed floor that
exactly
Lumen had cooked up, but it's just kind of a sight gag. I like it.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, as a lot of the stuff with Dylan, it lightens things up a little bit because, otherwise things are pretty bleak in this universe. So,
Yeah. We were talking about that on our podcast, Aaron and I, how we sort of compared it to Breaking Bad in that way. Like everything gets so dark in Breaking Bad. I feel like Dylan might be the Jesse of Breaking Bad, or of Severance rather, where he's kind of the comic relief for a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that is definitely one of the things that Vince Gilligan figured out in Breaking Bad, was that they could get away with doing a lot of crazy stuff as long as they could have a little bit of levity to go along with it, you know, so that it wasn't. And I think, you know, from interviews and stuff, he cited one of the spin-off shows from the X-Files that came out, that he said that was like, you know, it was really good, but it was really dark and it was just relentless. And so, you know, when he was pitching the idea, he thought he really needed to try to inject some of that levity into the writing to keep everybody on board or whatever.
Yeah, and I do hope we keep that through the whole show, because I see things getting even darker, perhaps. So I think it's going to need that, and I think, you know, with Ben Stiller kind of at the helm here, it's probably going to stay pretty funny.
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah,
you would think that there's some. I mean, I think when you hear Dan Erickson talk about stuff, like it's obviously coming from his sense of humor, a lot of it, but I'm not sure. You know, I think that there's probably some influence of like, let's make this funny coming from outside, you know, because it's just a good choice for this kind of material. I don't know if there's anything else. Is there anything else about Dylan and his wife? We did hear his wife's voice. That's an obvious choice to only have her be a voice on the phone to this point.
Yeah, I saw in your video you said it might be a spoiler who that is. I didn't look it up, but I didn't recognize it either. So
yeah, it's not like a big name or anything. Like, it's someone that it's recognizable to me, and I couldn't even say like what the person was famous for necessarily, if that was like, you know, I'm trying to be as vague as possible, but like,
yeah,
I saw them in a couple of things and they always made a big impression. So I was looking forward to how they would fit. And when I first heard of the casting, I didn't know that it was going to be his wife. I just, you know, so I spent some time thinking, I was like, man, it'd be cool if she was Dylan's wife. And then that turned out to be the case, you know.
It didn't sound like Gwendolyn Christie. So
no,
I don't think the goat herder or whatever she is, the milkmaid.
Yeah, they in the trailers they pretty much gave you an idea of what's going on with her.
Yeah. But that's exciting to hear. I guess that she is sort of a known name, because, like you implied, she might stick around. Might get more with her, and I could always use more with Dylan.
Yeah, one of the things about this show that really is impressive to me is that. And just to kind of go off what you're saying there, like how this show is able to do like a scene, they're able to bring and credit Bob Balaban for like no time on screen at all. Like you know what I mean? Like if you have an actor and he's in a scene, like if this is the way I understand it, right? If an actor makes an appearance in an episode of TV, then he gets paid. If he doesn't, he's not credited, he doesn't get paid, right? So they bring him in, they bring Christopher Walken in just for like to look scary for a second. Like that's stuff that you don't necessarily see in a lot of stuff that's coming out lately, because it seems like they've really been, you know, cutting the budgets all like everywhere, you know what I mean?
No, TV's getting expensive. And I think
so that's one of the things that's really, really fun is, and so like that could undermine what you're saying there, since it is someone that doesn't really necessarily mean anything in this show, but
that's true. They did bring Bob in just to shout "fuck you, Lumen" and then leave.
It sounded totally like the song that June's band played last season too. Like, I don't know if that was intentional or if that's just the way he said it, but I thought that totally, you know, reminded me of that.
And to that point, like, it feels like that sentiment is starting to spread. Like, everything that Lumen does results in their reputation eroding just a little bit. Like, this whole situation feels like it's spinning out of control for Lumen. And obviously it has to, right? This is a television show. That's the most dramatic thing, is to, you know, have Lumen's best laid plans, you know, do what best laid plans do. But I feel like it's kind of evident and it's happening right in front of our eyes. And it's those little touches that are like, well, now you've just made an enemy of yet another person who's going to go out there and evangelize against you. You've already got protesters. You've already got people in Congress worried about this. There are a lot of headwinds sort of against them right now, and it feels like they're mounting. They're growing. They're not. Lumen's not got this situation under control.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty impossible for them to be as big as they are and not have, some negative sentiment. Like, we don't know exactly how this world, like this timeline or whatever, is different from ours, but I think that would be the same across the board, right?
Yeah.
Like, if people are resorting to the severance procedure, things can't be all that much more utopian in this this situation.
For sure. Yeah. Big companies always have some naysayers anyway.
Yeah. I saw someone said in the chat, they asked if I had media access or if I power these out overnight. No, I do have early access for this show. The last time I had to do the overnight crazy grind was Shogun. I didn't have screeners for that one.
That's a tough one. Yeah, we have screeners as well. The good thing about it, doing podcasts though, is those take roughly 2 hours to record and about 40 minutes to produce. So we can
different situation.
We don't have to watch the next episode. I haven't seen the next episode, so
yeah,
I can't spoil anything. I can theorize all I want, and that's how I like it.
Yeah, it's hard with this series, but it seems essential because I don't know, if I have 6, I could watch all 6 right now, but it would take away a lot. Like, I just went through Silo, and having read the books ahead of time with that, it even makes it a little bit difficult because a lot of the fun people are having are wondering about these big mysteries. And it's like, well, I already know the answers to that. So like, whenever I'm doing coverage, I can just pretend like I don't, which is kind of silly. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah. And then how do you know which questions people are going to be asking? Because you don't have those questions because you already know.
Yeah. So what I did with Silo was I listened to your podcast because you guys hadn't read ahead. And so I would always have an idea of where people who are engaged and are watching closely, but just don't know where things are going or thinking. So that was actually a pretty big help in that situation.
Nice. Next season, I guess we should send you the early copy so you can get a head start on it. Yeah, that'd
be cool. I have screeners for Bald Move too. That would be VIP status. So the biggest question, obviously, that's been dominating things has been, is it Helena? Is it Helly? I'm pretty firmly in the it's Helena, and I went through the reasoning went through it pretty thoroughly last week with Aaron. Where are you at on that?
Did you? Okay. I'm also on that side. I think it's Helena. It makes a lot of sense. And some of my reasoning comes from, I just kind of see something strange in the performance. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not like real solid information, but there are a couple of things that I think are interesting. For instance, Milchek claims to the Innies that they've removed all the surveillance. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's strictly true, but they do give us a shot here conspicuously where the new hires notice that the cameras are gone, or somebody notices the cameras are gone.
It's Helena that does. She brings it up to be like, hey,
she points to it and says, look, guys,
total narc.
Yeah. So that makes me think like, well, they still need to get information. They still need to know what these Innies experienced on the outside, and none of them are talking. So what's the best way we could possibly get their attention or get that information out of them is to make them think they're not being watched. Just like Cobell said, the best way to make someone think they're free or not think they're in a prison is to make them think they're free. And so to not think you're being surveilled, but to have Helly in your midst actually recording everything and hearing all the things you're saying, she would be the perfect spy. Oh, you're muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, that just automatically happened for some reason. I saw it and then I was like, I didn't do anything. So I'll try to keep an eye out on it if it happens again. Just random. The mods are in somewhere muting me because they don't like me, I guess. So all right. So yeah, for the TLDR, like for mine was just rewatching the first season. Like I really couldn't find any good reasons why they would send her back. Like that was the big question at the end. Like why would someone who is a complete loose cannon, the reason they put her there in the first place was to have this media story, which then the Innie destroyed. Like what is the motivation? And I guess that things changed a little bit today with this episode, because it's, we're talking, we know now for sure that Mark is important and that Mark wants his team. They're willing to give him that, but otherwise, like there wasn't any good reason for Heliar to go back down there. Like she tried to kill the former CEO of the company. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's a dangerous move. So,
I mean, if I'm in a devil's advocate here, because I largely agree with you on that, but if I'm in a devil's advocate, I would say maybe there's some face saving they could do if they could make the Heli project work.
Yeah, I think so. I guess, but like,
that's
I think, yeah, that's there. Like, there's real world consequences if the Innie does something like they've already proven themselves ready to do.
Yeah, if Heli succeeds in killing Helena, like the consequences of that are far worse than having your media stunt go wrong.
Yeah. So we have James Egan up here on the image. What is your take on this guy?
Shame. I don't know, man. Fetid Moppet.
Yeah, it's great.
Fetid Moppet. I mean, it says everything he means to say. He's a very efficient communicator, this guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, because he uses very, as you pointed out, Kier-esque language. Fetid Moppet is not a phrase you hear often, but Heli doesn't. Helena, I should say, doesn't speak that way. So is he somehow more involved in the Kier portion of the Lumen operation than she is? Like as the eldest living Egan, perhaps?
Yeah, I guess like he might be more in tune with legacy. I mean, that's what he's probably thinking about, right? As the legacy of his family, his personal legacy. Because I mean, he's old. I mean, everything about the way they present this guy screams he's. So,
you froze for a second.
Am I unfroze now?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So I could see that. I mean, I think that he's the old guard, if nothing else, right? He's the representation of that.
Yeah, but it almost feels like he's not instilled the values of Kier in his daughter yet. In the way that like would reflect his own strange persona. Right? Or Miss Cobell. I mean, Cobell's feels more Kier than he does, or than Heli does.
Well, if that's okay, so if we're thinking about it like that, then are we saying that maybe Heli is more Lumen, more corporate facing, and he's more old world, magical, let's live forever, Egan style, culty side of things? Because I mean, I think that's the thing that's going on with Cobell, right? Is that she is a true believer, and that she's willing to do anything to further that cause, but not necessarily the current state of the corporation. which is what is who she actually works for.
Yeah, and at the same time, I mean, he's very much he very much wanted the project to succeed, but maybe not from like a world domination, sort of like corporate world domination thing, but maybe more like we need this project for the legacy of the Egan's. I don't know. He's an interesting guy. We just don't know much.
Yeah, we don't know much at all. Another new character we got here is Mr. Drummond. I saw a lot of people thinking that this was the person that we saw behind Mark in the first episode, whenever there was that, that shot of someone lurking in the background. That's definitely not the case, because that actor is credited. Man in the Hall is credited, and he's not anyone we've seen anywhere else so far, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Not someone I was familiar with either.
No,
I don't know what that means, but if they gave him a credit, then it's very possible that we'll see him play a larger role at some point in the future. But yeah, I like this guy. He's sort of like somewhere in between, like he feels like with that frolic that's like that frolic tattoo is such a small detail, but it also kind of gives him a completely different, like he's an outsider they brought in almost, or something like that, former bad boy, reformed into corporate, corporate, I don't know. I guess I think what I said in my video and what my best guess is that he's something similar to Natalie, just higher up on the food chain. He can go in between the board. When I first saw it, I thought maybe he's like a bodyguard or someone who just follows Helena around and makes sure that, keeps things, like a fixer for her personally. But I think that's not really the case.
Yeah, it's interesting. I get that vibe from him too, but maybe it's just because he's a large, intimidating man. But I mean, he also has that role. I mean, if you look at this photo you're showing right now, he's not part of this meeting. He's at a distance, just sort of waiting for it to be over.
That's a really great visual thing of like, know your place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. With that giant
you're on the
table.
inside, but you're not one of us.
Right. But then later in the meeting where they're discussing, what they're going to do with Mark and give him everything he wants, he's the intermediary between Helly and the board, even, I think.
That's sort of where I started to say, like, yeah, he's sort of like Natalie.
Yeah, he tells them how it's going to be. The board is giving Mark what he wants. So I don't know quite his role. He also is, I guess, tailing or being tailed, I don't know, by Jamie Egan as well. In that scene where he comes to the bathroom to speak to her.
He's got a the actor has a look, what I mean? He's a face that you remember.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, he might have just been standing outside the bathroom waiting for Helena.
Yeah, I don't know. So we sort of got into who we think is there on the floor. And I thought that, like, when originally I thought that maybe this wasn't supposed to be a mystery, like we're just supposed to get it that's Helena down there, and then there'll be some sort of a thing that happens. And then they had this scene which I thought was super interesting where where she's watching this happen, her innie, and it really kind of adds some possibilities to why she would go down there, why Helena would go down there.
Yeah. When I saw this, because I was very much on the train of Helly's Helena. I saw it and I saw her reaction to it, and I was really watching her for the rest of this episode, knowing that she goes back down there, all the way up until the point she does, and I couldn't shake the feeling like this is something she desires. Like she is jealous of Helly because she just doesn't have this on the outside. She's so devoted to Lumen that she's never, experienced any kind of genuine connection with anybody.
Yeah, I think that was my initial take when I talked to other people who watched it early. They when I bounced that off of them, they agreed. I think it's intentional. I think we're supposed to pick up on it. I was a little bit surprised because Britt Lauer, she backed that up. She said that Helly wears a mask 24/7. She has to be somebody and she has to present in a certain way. So she sees Helly, who is basically no mask, no filter, can do whatever she wants. And people respond to that. And then there was Dan Erickson, he added that it was no one has ever really seen her that. I mean, I think we see that her father, her father's calls her fetid moppet here and nothing else, you know what I mean? And we could see that there is some strangeness there, but we don't know a whole lot about her. So my thing is, I'm thinking she's going to be the future CEO. If they're hard on her, it's because she's being groomed for this position, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if the way he talked about it, it made it sound like maybe she never really got that from her family. So somehow she was jealous that this other version of her was getting something. And then there's the other idea of this is someone who's they hate the innies, you know what I mean? That part was pretty well established in the first. They see them as something less than human.
Yeah.
And so just people do with, their people who work for them and everything else. Right. I mean, but this is seeing her have something that she doesn't have that could also elicit a reaction from her. Right. Why does this innie get this thing when I can't have it?
Yeah. Which leads me right back to Helena decided she wanted to experience that. And so she goes down to the severed floor and pretends to be Helly.
Yeah. So I thought that, people had pointed out that they thought that the thing at the end of the elevator scene going down, that somehow is conclusive evidence. I would say that it's not. It could be a nice clue or whatever, but this stuff is the stuff that's really hard to shake. Why? If you're presenting all this, then what's the alternative of what we really needed to send her down there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's intentionally vague, intentionally confusing.
And it serves two purposes too, right? I mean, she's a spy, but then also these sort of cosplay, LARPing kind of things that we're talking about here, right? Of just going down there and getting to be someone else and getting to live a different life while also, doing what you need to do for the family business.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't see a lot of room in the future episodes to revisit those moments where, they decide what they're doing about Mark and whether they're going to give him his team. I feel like that's all we're going to get of that. So
I
the
think
reveal will probably come on the severed floor, I imagine. If
I think
she is Helena.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to spin back and forth anymore. I think we go forward now at this point, now that both stories are synced up.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I think if we haven't seen that, and you said something about being intentionally vague. I think that's definitely true. I mean, that's the whole idea of him saying we're going to give her Helly R and then not saying but not really Helena's going to go down. Right. You know what I mean?
If
he just says, because no one in that room would everyone there assume everyone there would know, Milchek would know that it's
got muted somehow.
It would definitely be something that he needs to know, right?
Yeah, no.
Talk about it that way,
Yeah, and I'll say this: the only thing that really gives me any doubt about Helena being the one who went down there is that shot you see of her just kind of touching her neck, because that to me says she's worried about what might happen if she becomes Helly again. And I think that scene is after they say they're going to give Mark his team back, including Helly.
No, I think not unless there's another one. The first one we see is the opening shot where she's touching her neck.
Really? That was that early?
But there is one there is one where she stares into the distance, and maybe she does touch her neck again there. I don't remember.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they won't. Either way, I don't think this is going to go on too much longer.
Yeah,
I think
the twist is she kind of wants to. She really wants to know what it's like to be loved by somebody, to have that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we're going to care about. Not is it or is it not Helena the whole season.
Yeah, because I do think that's an issue. You know what I mean? Like Helly right now is essentially, if it's not her down there, then she's in limbo, right?
Yeah.
And initially I thought, well, there's no way they're going to get a reason to send her back down there. But now that we know that Mark is so important and that they really need him to finish this file for some reason, then I guess there are paths to where like they might say, like, if they figure out it's Helena, then they can say, well, you got to send the real Helly down here. I don't know how they could.
How would they
know
verify?
For sure that they were telling the truth? But there's a path there at least, right? Before I was like, there's no path. Helly's done if that's what the case is.
Right. Yeah, I have a big question about that though. Like, why is Mark so important? But not even why is Mark so important. I think I have that kind of understood. It's because Gemma is important to them. The tests they're doing on Gemma, but why is that important?
Exactly. Do you have anything that?
I mean, it goes back to kind of what I think is the state of the Severance project. That it's kind of in an experimental phase. They have very few employees. Although this season is kind of blowing that theory out of the water too, because they have multiple branches with floating employees across the world. It's not even
in more countries
this was just
than
one
currently exist in our world. They have offices,
right? So at this point it doesn't feel experimental, so that I feel like that theory is off the table. Why could Gemma be so important? It's obviously has to do with the connection to Mark. That's why Mark's important.
Do you think it's Gemma as Gemma, or do you think it's what's going on with Gemma in relation to how that might affect the Egan family in some way? Because that's sort of where I'm at. I think Gemma is part of, they're trying to accomplish something with Gemma, obviously. Like she's, the screen we see of her is on it says Cold Harbor right on it, right? And we know
that's the project they're working on.
That she has some involvement with the project he's working on that they need him to finish. But I don't know if like what they're going to find at the end of that is important for Gemma and that's important to them, or if it's more of something that they can, use for their own purposes later on.
I mean, that goes into the I don't know, Innies as a vessel for the Kiers or for the Egans rather. That whole theory, which I'm not like ruling out, but it's not my favorite theory.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, because I asked Aaron at the beginning of the other, because I'm more of a, like, I enjoy watching the theories and listening to them and stuff like that. But like, I'm less interested, like episode by episode in the answers to those questions, and more in how the show just is, the experience of watching the show in the moment. Like, how is it engaging with, like, if the answers to the questions might not be that great whenever it comes down to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
maybe,
I mean, you don't really know, right? But if the show is stringing me along like this, but then also making it a rewarding experience as we're doing, and not like in the friends along the way kind of way. I'm saying, like, if the actual sitting down and watching an hour of television and feeling completely engaged and feeling like I, having emotional reaction and feeling like I experienced something from it. If I'm getting that, then I'm not as concerned about, well, I need this to make sense too. You know what I mean? Like, I need it to be like I need it to be like airtight or whatever. But so but one thing I noticed with this show in like the way that people deal with it, there's like kind of two different camps. There's like the full tinfoil, like in it just only for the theories and the mysteries. And then there's like just more of a, like, I guess my position is just more of a traditional, I like TV, and if it's good, then that's sort of like all I need kind of thing. Like, I like the characters, like I like sci-fi, and I like this premise of giving these people no experience, so that they have to experience this situation and become people in the process or whatever. But as far as like the nuts and bolts of, like, whether they're gonna have some grand scheme for Keir Egan's immortality or whatever at the end, it's not pressing.
Yeah, I get you. And that's why I like a lot of your videos, is because you're a lot of times focused on the characters and what they're feeling, what they're going through. Even though, you are also focused on the mysteries, because I think with a show like this, you kind of have to be.
Yeah. It's part of it for sure.
Right. But I definitely, I'm with you on that. I think there's a way to do both. It comes down to basically how you tell that story. If you can walk that line of not revealing so much that everybody can guess it, but not revealing nothing, and just kind of drip feed it for the whole show to a point where where you're going. You that's the key. You got to know where you're going in advance. Otherwise, you end up like lost, and nobody's happy at the end of that thing. I think they can do it, and they could come up with goats being clones with Cure in each one, and I don't know. There are some wild theories out there, but chat was saying, I think John was talking about how this baby Kier in the intro actually kind of points a little more toward the eternal youth thing. Starts to make that plausible.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of reasons to think that is the project, without a doubt, and I'm okay with that. It's just it's not my primary motivator.
Yeah, because at the bottom of it all, right, we're talking about people that have incredible wealth, and they have they're not operating on the same kinds of, like, the things they need are different than the things we need, right? Like, they're not basic survival and things like this are not going to be a problem for like generations. Like, they have generations of wealth to never have to worry about things like that. So what do those kind of people think about? You obviously, you're going to start thinking about immortality and other weird stuff, because that's what nobody else can have. So, like, that's kind of where you go, right?
Yeah, but it's also about reshaping the world as you want it to be.
Because you think that for whatever reason you deserve to have been born the way that you were, and that you can somehow guide things better than someone who wasn't, right?
Yeah, for whatever insane reasons people try to control everybody else for. But I don't have that impulse. But I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, part of it feels like it is some preservation of their own lives, and part of it feels like it is getting everyone else to adhere to their values. And I think it could be both, and it looks like it is both, perhaps. But I don't know where the goats come in. People get wild with that stuff. I'm not all the way down the goat hole like my co-host Aaron.
I mean, I think we'll have to probably get something with that. I mean, I think that's one thing that I think that they've been quite good about, is they know what they asked us to think about, and they may not be giving us like complete answers, but they're at least touching on those things, to make it be like, yeah, okay, don't worry. We didn't forget that we introduced baby goats in the first season, and everyone got really excited about it. So there will be more goats, at some point. We got a new term. Rickon coined a new term this week, Kobelvig. which is actually pretty. It's pretty useful when it comes down to it, because I don't know about you, but like whenever I'm like writing or thinking about this character, I always have to do that thing. Do I want to say Selvig, Harmony, Cobell, what? You know what I mean? Like she's a lot of different things.
And because she's not severed, it becomes even harder, right? Because you can't refer to her innie or outie as different, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that the internet didn't come up with this before they did, frankly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the internet is pretty smart. The hive mind is impressive, but I mean, we're talking about Rick and Hale here, so.
I don't know. I don't think that's a compliment.
So, the big thing after this episode is, where does Harmony even fit in at this point?
I mean, she's a piece of the puzzle for Mark to put together. I think that's the main thing, is she knows something clearly, and Mark knows she knows something. Yeah, I think that's Mark's mission.
She did give that away to Mark before the end of this episode.
Yeah. So Mark's mission as an outie now has to be find Mrs. Selvig, find Cobelvig, and figure out what she knows. As far as her involvement with Lumen, I don't know. That's murkier. That's harder to see.
It's kind of out right now, right?
I mean, she's that true believer, right? In the original mission of Kier, it seems, in the values that the Egans stand for. So I don't see her walking away from it entirely. She might try and get back in there to change things from the inside. But I don't know. She's going to have a struggle trying to do that.
Yeah.
Because it seems like they're giving her just complete BS job, right? This
to just keep her
or whatever
close,
she's supposed to be
but not give her any power to actually have an effect on what's going on.
Right.
That was my take.
But maybe she can get a toehold with that and leverage it into some kind of change to what she thinks Lumen should be.
Yeah, so you said Mark was going to have to find her, and she was carrying a suitcase at the end there. So do you think she's going somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, it seemed to me like she was packing and heading
out.
What
that means when you see a character walking around with a suitcase, that they're going on a trip, right?
Yeah. Although Bert doesn't seem like he went on a trip, and he had a suitcase in last season.
Yeah, so I think they're gonna. I think that she's not really gonna have an active role maybe in the next couple of episodes or so. So that makes me think about how she'll come back into it. I think you're onto something there with Mark and her, perhaps teaming up.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the she's obviously knows things. She even knows some things that Lumen doesn't know because of the reintegration part, because she never got her meeting with the board.
Yeah, that's true.
I hadn't thought about that. So yeah, that's another place where she fits in. But it's just kind of crazy to think about how central of a character she was last time and sort of how on the sideline she is right now.
Mm-hmm. I think she'll get back in the game.
We got Irv. You guys were, when I was listening to your podcast, you guys were mentioned, I think Aaron mentioned about the watermelon sculpture that we haven't seen from the trailer.
Yeah.
Irv is he goes to the phone booth here. He makes a call. Someone doesn't pick up, but he says that he got the message, or Innie got the message. So what did you think of that? Because
my first thought is the Innie is seeing the image that I'm painting. That feels like he's trying to send that
like
through.
from the black blob's dreams, or from when he woke up.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, because that was the message, right? The message was that there's something going on.
Yeah, the message is that hallway with the elevator at the end.
Yeah, there's something wrong with the testing floor.
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting thing about that to me is how did the Audi Irv get that image? Because
Yeah.
presumably he'd never have access to that.
Yeah. My thinking on that is that he's been working at Lumen for 9 years, but whenever they asked him, that's according to the LinkedIn profile. And then
Okay.
when he talked about being the longest serving MDR, he said he's been severed working in that department for 3 years. So that means that for 6 years before that, he may have been a regular employee, maybe something like Milchek, and had a chance to see that.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Like, that's just my favorite way to describe it. I don't know if that's definitely the case, but that's the one that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah. I was also thinking maybe if we don't know who he's on the phone with here, but if it's Ragabi, perhaps she could have given him that image because she is also potentially privy to that information as somebody who worked on the Severance project.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Ragabi makes the most sense, or the people that Ragabi's working with here. It feels a little strange to make that, to obscure that so much, though. Like, it almost feels like that would be like not much of a reveal if they string this along.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And
sure,
then it just turns out to be the same person that's working with Mark anyways.
Yeah.
But that's just sort of like, it's early going, so it's hard to say. But that was my initial thing, because Ragabi's the only person we know that worked there and is currently working against them in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't imagine that she's just working alone in a vacuum either.
Okay. Here's the most interesting option. I don't know whether it's his boyfriend or his husband, but it's Christopher. It's Bert's significant other.
You think so?
And there's like this double spy kind of game going on where Bert's spying on Irv, and Irv through John Noble is spying on Bert.
Yeah, I was like, I really, I think that Bert showing up, one of those first like moments, I was just like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on there when I saw that? And so after thinking about it for a little bit, I do kind of think that there's a simple explanation there of him just like, why did this guy bang on my door? And, like, what's going on with that? Like, he just, because I do think that they fired him, or they didn't fire him. They forced him out, they forced him into retirement. I don't think that's something that just happened at that time, So
yeah,
I think that if I was the guy who just had my job, like that happened with my job, and then someone comes banging on the door, then I might want to go find out what he's up. And I got a little bit of free time on my hands now too, because I'm not going to work anymore.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. That might be the inroad to see another flashback, because I really, and they know this, I really want to see what happened with Irv at that door.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that they do actually kind of need to explain.
Yeah, because it's going to be his Audi, and he's going to be like surprised that he's there, right?
Yeah,
he didn't go to Bert's house. What's that interaction like? Especially now knowing, and they'll do it next episode, especially now knowing that Walken is following him. Yeah, that makes it even more interesting.
Yeah, like I said, it could be something more. Like, he could have just been unfortunate enough to fall in love with any of a guy who's a really psychotic weirdo, or, like you said, is also trying to do something to figure out what's going on in the severed floor at Lumen. But like, the simplest thing is that he's just a regular guy. He's got his own grievances, and then if he meets up with, if these two get together, then their grievances might lead to something.
The simplest thing doesn't feel like what this show does.
Not necessarily, not usually. No. That's a fair point. Yeah, so I think that we should say that they did make this out. Like, if we're looking at this image of Christopher Walken here, they tried to make it look like he was creepy as hell. Like that there was something dangerous going on with that.
Yeah, which is why I think Bert is spying, like, in some official, semi-official capacity for Lumen on Irv. But I don't know how much sense that makes. It's just a gut feeling I get based on this terrifying image.
Yeah, the score kind of set that up at this part too. Like, it was pretty typical, like TV setup, all atmosphere and score to make you get the hair on the back of your neck standing up or whatever. Anything else about Irv?
No, not for the moment.
How about this new intro, the new credit sequence?
Oh, yeah, this one's even crazier than the first seasons.
Yeah, the first one was, obviously the style and the way it looks is really cool. You know what I mean? Like, there's no doubt about that. I was a little bit like, whenever I was reading about that when the first season came out, they were pretty straight up and saying, like, they didn't tell the guy anything, like any of the actual story beats, like what was going to happen in the story. So a lot of what it was just visual.
Yeah, you're talking about the guy who made that
stuff. Yeah, that like people were trying to break it apart and look for clues, but they really couldn't have been there unless they were just inherently in the, from the little bit of a description of the show that he got. And I think he had 50 pages of script was what they said. That was it.
Okay.
The rest was just him, sort of extrapolating from that. So with this now, like, I think it's a different situation. I think that you could actually break this down a little bit and see some things that may give away some stuff later, or maybe not give away, but like make you think about, or you see it now, you don't know what it is, but later after you have all the information, you're like, oh, look, that was right there hidden in plain sight or whatever.
Right. Yeah. The thing that really freaked me out was seeing Mark inside of one of the Lumen implants being pulled out of a brain by himself, but it's Mark as an outie being pulled out by his innie, which was the strangest part about it. I think I really don't know what to make of that, other than you get the idea that this season might be about reintegration.
Yeah, which I think is 100% the case, right? I mean, you don't introduce that in the first season, and I mean, the first thing he does is he meets Petey, right, on the outside for the most part, and so I think that is coming, and like I said, I believe if the idea is that the innies are people, you don't build a show about them, build a show up around them and then murder them all off into non-existence. You know what I mean? So the only way to keep both or to kill the outie is to reintegrate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And so when you're talking about like the innie pulling him out or whatever, I think there's some literal stuff happening there. You know what I mean? That he can't really move on without his innie's help in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, when you look at their personalities, I mean, if you're
because
trying to move on from his depression, yeah.
Besides his drinking, that's what defines him, right? Is that he's crippled by grief. He can't move forward 2 years later with his life.
I thought it was conspicuous how he doesn't answer Milchick when he says, "You still feel that, right?"
Yeah, and so that was one of the things that came to me after the fact was that. I was definitely thinking, like, why did he go back? Like, what was your take on why he went back after all of the things? Like, he had Devin pushing him and he was just like walked away, wasn't interested. Milchick offers him a raise, which doesn't really matter. I mean, it's nice, it's generous, but like none of that stuff really should change things. What do you think was the thing that took him from being like, no way, I'm not going back to actually going back?
I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is So if you look at Mark in season 1, and I thought it was super interesting when he gave his reasoning for getting severed in the first place. It wasn't necessarily to ease his own grief, but to, like, to paraphrase, create a person who could experience something that isn't grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Milchick comes in with like a 1-2 punch of guilt and praise. And I think he like takes a slight misstep when he brings Gemma up, but before that, when he's saying like your innie is very brave and it'd be a shame to reward that with non-existence, I think that stuck. I think that's the thing. He like created this person to experience something that he couldn't, and now he's going to take that away from them when they feel it. Like when they're happy inside, they found love. Like, yeah, that's.
Well, yeah, I think those are the things that start to add up, because I think in season 1, that's the trajectory he was on, right? He didn't really think much of his innie until other people pointed out that he might want to do that, since, that person exists and it didn't ask to come into existence, and that, like, he sort of is responsible for it being there, him being there, I guess. And, before he's just like, oh no, we're just separate. They do their thing. They're enjoying their time at the office while I'm here, you know what I mean? And we're completely separate. So there was he was on that trajectory of starting to see that there was another version of him, another person that wore his skin around for 8 hours a day or whatever.
Yeah. And I think the intrusion into his Audi life actually reinforces that too.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think that Milchick is appealing to that, but like in a smart way. Like it's a calculated thing that he's doing, and he makes, he pulls it off. The thing with Gemma, I think, he mentions Gemma.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think at that time do you think he's checking to see if anything came up for him during the OTC, or if he has any inkling that maybe there is some way that he's figuring out that his wife is down there?
I don't know. It's such a like subtle and complex conversation.
It really is. I watched it so many times, and it was there. It doesn't force you into a decision either way.
No. The thing that sticks with me though is Milchick doesn't know he walked out into the middle of this room and screamed she's alive. So bringing up Gemma, bringing up Gemma isn't like a risky move in his mind.
Okay.
And it's not probing to like say, hey, did you mention anything about Gemma? Because he doesn't think that's even really possible. So in my mind, he's bringing up Gemma because he knows through all of his experience with Mark's innie and Audi that this is the issue in his life. This is the this is the button I can push that will be most effective. Right.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I would agree. And I think that's why he tells him that he found love, because then he can say, you may not be your innie, but that, like what he says, it can come back up to you. Right. But I don't think that's the part that works on Mark. I think the idea that he found love is it's just sparking that idea that maybe Gemma is down there. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, interesting. Okay. I was also thinking, is the man who lost his wife and is grief stricken about it going to take that away from himself inside?
Yeah, no, I like that. I definitely like that. And I didn't go that way myself, but I think that's a great idea too. But yeah, I was thinking, I wonder because he brings up Gemma a little while later, whenever when he talks to Selvig, and that's what or Kobelvig, I guess.
And you can see him in the car when he's contemplating, do I go inside to Lumen? Do I go to another day at work? He's thinking about Gemma. He's like, maybe Devin's right. Maybe I need to see this through.
Because I think that's the thing, right? Like if you're really him, and all of this, I think it's a huge amount of just insanity that you have to kind of process. And I think that would take time. And we're talking about 48 hours in between the time it happens and the time he goes back to work, right?
Yeah.
It's not a lot of time to understand that it's possible that your dead wife is actually still alive in the
Even though you
office.
saw her body all burnt up. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they did a pretty good job of showing how he would almost have to go back because of the fact that if it's even a possibility, then he has to do it, right?
Yeah, I think so. But I think this is where Milchick messes up too, because he doesn't know that Mark just had this experience and is already thinking about Gemma and questioning, could she be alive? And when he mentions Gemma, that just like connects some weird vague dot in his head to what Devon's trying to tell him. He's like, why would he mention Gemma right now? It's such a weird coincidence that I just had this experience and now they're mentioning Gemma to me.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. I think, you know, if you just think about it like if you just say it out loud, like this guy is trying to find out if his dead wife is really alive on the testing floor. It doesn't sound great, but it plays quite well, I think.
Yeah, it's all about how you do it.
The Devon stuff, like okay, so we brought up reintegration, and like I said, I do think that's the next step. I thought that this bit with Devon, though, like I don't think Devon would be on team reintegration. I think she would want to do things by the book or whatever, right? Like she talks about a lawyer here and some other things. Like I feel like she would want to do this above board, like shine a light kind of situation where, you know, make him a whistleblower, whatever, not mess with his brain. So maybe both of those personalities could exist inside there at the same time, especially if he was like honest about what happened to Petey or whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's not, he would be the test case. Like there's not a successful example he can point to be like, look, this guy did it and he's fine. There is no
you're
guy,
right.
You know what I mean? Like Petey had a terrible experience and died.
And there does seem to be some official procedure, some legal procedure. And I'm curious on what your opinion is about the state of that, because she mentions that she talked to a lawyer friend of hers, and that lawyer seems to think that he can petition, and then Mark cuts her off. I don't know what he could petition for, like a conversation with himself through an intermediary, like to get in the file the information they have on him as an innie, to like get a recording of himself for a day.
I would think it would be a recording, because we've seen them do that with Helly and Helly R, right? Like they could have him record a message.
Yeah.
They could have an independent agency go down in there and record it for him and make sure he's not doing that under any duress, like that sort of thing. That's pretty much as far as it can go, though, right?
Do you think that's like established legal precedent in regard to the severance procedure, or is this something that the lawyer's just kind of riffing?
I mean, I think they can kind of play pretty fast and loose there, because they made up that there was that one interview with Natalie on the TV where the guy was talking about a woman going and getting pregnant at while at work, and which was something that would definitely happen, right? Like these are things that would happen.
Sure.
You take away someone's life experience and put them in a fishbowl with a bunch of other people all day long, like stuff's going to happen, right? So there would be all kinds of different situations. I mean, you could probably come up with like a dozen of strange, crazy things that happen to people's bodies because they're not in control of them during the day, right? So I think they could probably, I don't know that it's ever been established, but I think that there's enough stuff there that they could make it seem like it has been established somewhere.
And I'm interested in that part of the world, I guess, if they want to explore it, like the legal strategies around it. It probably won't be super compelling, so they probably won't do much of it, which is smart.
Yeah, I just think that right now it serves as it makes Devon more of a roadblock than an ally, than like not necessarily like she might be completely right. Like reintegration might be a terrible idea or whatever, but we still kind of want, at least I do. I want to see that happen. Like I want to see,
Oh,
I want to see him do it, and I want to see him pull it off, and I want to see what ensues from both of those personalities being stuck in the same body. And I want to watch Adam Scott play that, you know what I mean? Like that's going to be great. But yeah, so I thought that was something that was definitely going on there, was that Devin is on his side. She's probably the the adult in the room, I guess, like, I don't know what a better analogy would be, but she's the one that's a little more on solid ground. And ultimately though, I think that his path is to go around her and try to reintegrate instead.
Yeah, I do wonder how he would find Ragabi again. I don't know if that's like if the school was her base of operations. It sounded like maybe it was prior to this, but surely after the death of Grainer, like they had to have found his body, or maybe she moved it. Maybe it's in the river. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, Ragabi should be laying low, that's for sure. But I think I don't think it would be too surprising. I mean, I guess he can't reach out to her. I'm trying to think exactly how they parted, like what was the lot. Like,
I mean,
did she say, I'll come and find you, or?
No, she said, don't throw up, get out of here. And then he threw up in the alley.
Yeah, that could be a different thing. I wasn't really taking that into consideration. I just sort of assumed that she wants to make reintegration happen, so she'll come after him if she has to.
Yeah, you might be right.
Because it's not a long time. I mean, Grainer, it feels like a long time because season 1 was 3 years ago, but like Grainer's death is not that far removed from where we're at in the story right now, right? Just
maybe like a few days, a couple weeks.
That's what I want to say, but I can't say for sure.
Maybe a month ago.
I'm looking at the chat. Someone says a month, but that sounds like it's just a guess too,
Yeah, it's all a guess. What is time when your job is your life?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I thought was really cool about doing it this way, was seeing things only from the perspective. Every elevator ride beforehand was, you see them go up and change and then come out somebody else. Like seeing it, just how it really feels for the innies is kind of wild,
Yeah, they really make it feel like hell.
And I saw a post earlier where someone was pointing out that the clock was messed up, or they thought the clock was wrong whenever Milchek sent him back up after he made the call to the board. So as Audi came out of the elevator saying good night, thinking it's the end of the day, but it's really still morning because he didn't make it through the day. You know what I mean? Like they sent him back up to the elevator. So that would be like really weird,
Yeah.
When you come out, you just assume it's 5 p.m. or whatever every day, but sometimes it might not be.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, what do you make of, I guess, the rearrangement, the remodeling that happens between Mark going up and coming back down? Because as I recall, that severed elevator opens into kind of a lobby area or a waiting room or a lounge.
Yeah, there were some couches in there before.
Yeah, but the last time Mark comes down, it opens right to that painting that's on a wall.
Yeah, I think that there was sort of like the camera angle that they used there was sort of to make that look oppressive, like more than it really. I think the room is still there. I think it's the same thing. It's just they kind of shot that with a strange angle that made it look a lot flatter than it really, or it took away the depth. That's what I thought.
Yeah, you could be right.
That way the painting that's of Keir pardoning his people or whatever, or his the people who betrayers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes that look a whole lot more ominous.
Yep.
Scary.
Who made that painting? Bert's not doing it anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something that we mentioned last week too. Like, I wonder if that was part of the previous collection and they just have a painting for everything, or if that's something they commissioned over the weekend.
Well, it almost has to be commissioned over the weekend, because the characters that are buried up to their shoulders, to me, look like idealizations, let's say, of the characters from MDR, of Mark and Dylan. And
yeah, I mean, when we brought it up last week, we didn't have an answer, but that it does seem to make the most sense, was that they had this thing commissioned.
Yeah,
it's funny too when you think about that. They supposedly had the stop motion thing made pretty quickly too.
In a weekend. Yeah, and the stop motion is hard to make, man.
That doesn't really seem possible, but those certain things like that, I'm willing to give them.
Yeah, for sure.
I saw someone, someone else had mentioned the 5 months thing and everything else. I think that's all just part of making them as disoriented as possible. I mean, that's something that the creators said about the way that the offices are furnished and the way they're set up. That's all a tactic by Lumen to make them as disconnected, like the tech, like they have more advanced tech. We see Devin and Mark both using phones and laptops and things like that look pretty much like what we have, but yet they go to work and they have these really retro looking terminals. So it's like all of that is just to make them as disconnected from their outside life as they could be. And I think that whole idea of like, it was 5 months ago, this happened and that happened, all of that is just part of that same game. Same with the painting and everything else, like they're not, they just want to make it as foreign and different as the outside world as possible.
Yeah. All manipulation.
What else? If you guys have anything that you want us to address, you might want to drop it in the comment section now. I'm looking over my notes. What's your time situation like, Jim?
Oh, I'm good for a little longer.
All right. So I'm going to look at my actual note instead of the thing we're doing. I'm looking at my actual notes and see if there's anything that jumps out to me here.
Yeah, good call.
Someone's saying something about, we actually said something about this earlier, asking about if the door guy looks like Dylan. Yeah, he does. But like I said earlier, it's not in real life. He actually doesn't. Like they did a really great job of setting that up.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you why he looks like Dylan, other than it's a funny sight gag.
Yeah, his delivery is perfect in that scene. Lumen, they make their own doors in house. It's hubris.
Oh, that's a good question. Why would they show that claymation video to new employees?
Why would they show it to new employees?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it makes them look good, doesn't it? It makes Lumen is doing a pretty terrible thing, and that's the point, is to make it more digestible, right? More acceptable to whatever. So if they I don't know, like that's another question I had, and it kind of got put on hold this week because we don't see the innies. But one of the things I was wondering was that some of that stuff seems, and this might be in line with what the person's asking here. Some of that stuff seems a little unlumen, like they're like, I get the whole make them think there's something else, but when you do that, when you tell them that they're famous outside or that they accomplished something by doing this thing, you kind of grant them some humanity, don't you? When really what you're trying to make is you're trying to make like drones, worker drones, right?
Yeah, and I don't know, because it gives hope. It kind of gives hope, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing here. Like, do you have hope that the work you're doing can reach farther than the four walls you're in?
Right.
Is that a positive, so they'll work more? Or does this instill in them the idea that they could somehow get out of the situation they're in?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, I don't think it's clear. I don't think that you could say one way or the other for sure, but I think it's
And it would
notable.
affect different people different ways too, right? That's the thing that kills me about this idea that Lumen has, is somehow they're going to like solve the equation for making all humans like perfect. But everybody's so different. That equation is going to be entirely different for everybody.
Right.
Because that's what the MDR department is
That's why
about.
that's why you got to
Yeah.
balance the tempers, Jim.
Yeah.
You got to get a little data refinement going. And if everyone had the right ratio of tempers, then there'd be no problems.
Yes, Pete, but who refines the refiners? That's what I want to know.
Let's see. I'm looking at these. Let's see if we got anything else down here. Cold Harbor is a department, not just Gemma's file.
Okay. Open to that possibility.
Evan Ward says the illusion of agency. Yeah, and I just don't know. Like, I mean, because it seems like a lot of stuff when you're dealing with a situation like this, a lot of stuff is a slippery slope. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Before Helly arrived, they were pretty passive and okay with things just being completely bad for them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't start to until things started getting, started to shake up, and before Ricken's book made its way down there, like, they really didn't question their existence much at all. So you would just seem like you would want to limit that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, they were so
which they
focused on
do.
not
I mean,
telling
they
them
literally
anything.
don't want them. They make up fake stories about the departments killing each other so that they won't seek each other out, right?
Yeah, speaking of the fake stories, you don't think there's anything to the Rick and Hale has written a book about Kier and how it changed his life, right?
No, I thought that was when I watched that, when it was just like the first 8 minutes or whatever, I was thinking, oh, is this true? Is any of what he's saying true? And that was the detail that just pushed me over the edge. I was like, okay, this is all just completely made up. I mean, it's with a picture of them all sort of photoshopped into this other car and everything else too. So it wasn't just that, but that was sort of like the thing that pushed me over the edge.
Gotcha. Because I know that's a popular theory that Rickett is somehow, a Kier acolyte and orchestrating.
I don't think so. I mean, it's possible, but I think if you go down that road, then you have to be like Devin doesn't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because otherwise she's just withholding some very, some information that could be useful if he has some connection, you know what I mean? Like, if she really wants to find out what's going on and thinks that Gemma might be down in the then, she might want to mention that Rickon has an inside connection there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. I think it's BS.
I think Rickon is fine just the way he is. I don't think you need a twist on that character. Let's see. I'm looking. Do you see anything down here that we could address?
Yeah, this is a theory I've had for a while now. Jason says, why is Irving reprimanded so much for dozing off? Maybe there's something dangerous about it. I think this is the key. I think this is the connection between the innie and the outie is in the like subconscious.
Yeah.
Or some like liminal space between awake and asleep. And that is because I mean, and to me, like Irv saying the innie got the message is playing into that too, because Irv outside has been slamming coffee, listening to heavy metal music.
Yeah, that's what he was trying to do.
Awake.
He was trying to get those memories to bleed over, right?
Right. As
That's
he's
the way I
painting all
interpret
these pictures over and over and over, he's putting that image in his mind on the cusp of sleep and forcing any Irv to go to sleep and see those images that he's planted there. That's the idea I had.
Yeah. And so that makes sense. And I think that the fact that he's doing that, and they pointed out that it is a big problem, like they sent him straight to wellness or to the break room whenever that happened in different times. So
oh yeah,
there is, I think that they're saying, the show is telling us that there is there's some reason for Lumen to worry about that.
Yeah, and it implies that Lumen even knows.
And yeah, like thinking about how that works, like they do share those things. Like they obviously, the parts of their memory that give them everything that they do that makes them be able to work in the office is present. You know what I mean? So like they're definitely you have implicit and explicit memory, I guess, right? So some of those things, there has to be some crossover and a chance that they could connect through something that way.
Yeah, and I don't know much about brain science. I don't pretend to be a neuroscientist. But one thing I have read is that when you are sleeping, that's when your brain is turning your short-term memories into longer-term memories and kind of creating those synaptic connections. So that would be like a natural point of connection to that.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do we got here? I don't know. Do you have anything else? Because I think maybe we could think about wrapping things up. If anybody has anything that they really want to throw out there, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much talked out. I talked for like 4 hours about this episode over the course of the week. So
it's a good one though. I'm definitely, I think the first, TV is how TV is. So those are always hard episodes. The first few to set the table. And I'm pretty impressed with the way that they set the table in both settings here with these first two episodes. And it feels like we're ready to really take off at this point.
Yeah, I'm
people are asking about Miss Wong. Do you have any kind of any kind of idea what's going on there?
Not at all.
No, I'm just happy that I'm just happy that that's something that they introduced. I like it. I like the kid, and I don't know. I don't claim to understand why. People are saying that she's from the testing floor. I feel like my actual thought on it was that she was someone who was like, they haven't really, like, you have Harmony. She was at the school for girls, right? Which seems like an orphanage kind of situation where they take people in and they indoctrinate them. It seems like a straight to true believer zealot pipeline, right? Yeah. People that you can take and mold the way you want and then use them. So I think that there's probably a good chance that that's what's going on with Miss Wong, that she's not someone that they cooked up in the basement and grew from for the last
DNA or something.
Yeah, but you never know. Never know.
But it does reinforce the themes of the innies being children. She's got like hall monitor energy.
Yeah. She also felt like there might have been something there, because like the way that she turned that conversation with Mark whenever he said, "I made 4 new friends today," and she said, "No, I'm a supervisor, not a friend." And she drew that line. Like, that felt a little bit like there was something behind it, but it could have just been her training too, I guess. Right.
Yeah. That's what I'm leaning toward. It's very Cobell of her,
I mean, Harmony could have gone through now that I think about it, she could have went through the same thing. She might have been there for that long. It really wouldn't hurt. You have to wonder how she never advanced past her position. But yeah. It's so slow. They hold so many shots. I kind of hate the slow pacing. I was thinking that when I rewatched this, not that I hated it. I was thinking I loved it, but I was thinking that the current complaints that I see are like, this is almost always it. Like, it seems like somehow post-pandemic people really lost their attention span.
I've noticed that too. And I'm kind of worried. Like I said, worried is not the word, but I'm interested to see how it goes in the middle of this season, because that's where people always get impatient. It's like that happened with House of the Dragon this year, though I think some of that was warranted. But yeah, I see more and more shows, people complaining, the middle just dragged. They want the beginning and the end, but you got to set so much stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking, I was like, man, this is like, it's super intentional. And I think people often use the word deliberate, like it does not care if you're in a hurry. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, we want to set this up. This is what we think is necessary. And you can either watch it or you're not going to watch it. Like, that's just the way that it feels to me whenever I rewatch the first season. And like I said, I love that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it sets the atmosphere and the tone, like, in a way that you're not going to get otherwise. You know what I mean? Like, there's other things, there's other tricks and things you can do, but I don't know. I just wondered, like, whenever it came back, if I was going to see that all season long, like, oh no, because I mean, it's not particularly plot heavy either. You know what I mean? Like, as far as, like, there's so many different things going on, and it's compartmentalized in different ways that it's not just straightforward, like boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. But they do have a knack for, at the very end of the episode, doing something that makes you go, I need to see the next episode right now.
And I feel like it what I like about this, what I like here, as, because I mean, that's obviously a trick too. Like, that's obviously, since the binge model came out, all of a sudden shows would have that thing where you just had to turn, like, you didn't really know what was going on unless you watched the next episode.
You didn't even want to wait for the countdown that's like 5, 4, 3. You just hit the button.
Like that is not, I don't favor that, but like, it seems to me like this show kind of introduces a new idea.
Yes.
Like something for you to think about for the next week in between. And then, like, that's a different kind of anticipation. Like, it's creating anticipation in the same way of like the next thing. But I just like this is more up my, this is more to my taste, like up my alley or whatever, of like,
yeah,
I'm happy to just keep thinking about this one thing that they just dropped on me for the next week, and then see where they go from there, instead of just being like, damn, I really want to know what happened. Like here we already know he's going back down in we already saw that, from the other end. Like we pretty much, like, the thing at the end here is that he realizes that Kobelvig has some information about Gemma potentially, and so that's just, I don't know. It just plays different.
Yeah, I agree. They don't feel like cheap cliffhangers to me.
Yeah. Well, I think that we could wrap it up. You'll be back here for what? Next time you'll be back will be episode 5.
Yeah, because next week we're doing a 24-hour Groundhog Day marathon to raise charity for the Cure
you can definitely promote that. I'll try to put a link in the description about this for that too.
Yeah. So I can't really be chatting till 11 p.m. the night before about this. I'm going to have to be setting up all of our equipment and stuff. So
yeah.
But yeah, then Aaron will come back and then I'll come back. Yeah.
Next week I have my friends from the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. They're going to come in, at least one, maybe two of they'll be joining. And then after that, after you guys are done with your 24 hours ordeal, that's for a very good cause. And like you said, it's for Alzheimer's. So if anybody has interest in that, you guys always raise, like, how many years have you been doing it for that in particular?
For this charity, I want to say this is our 5th year for this charity.
That seems right to me. I mean, it's as long as I can remember hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, last year we raised over $35,000, which was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I always drop by and I always try to contribute something to that too, because I think it's something that's worth trying to help out with if you can.
Yep.
Yeah, so like I said, we're going to do that, and we're going to try to bring in some special guests on top at different times too. This is I'm pretty happy with the way that this is, people are showing up for it and everything else. So I think, we can definitely commit all the way out for doing this, and then hopefully it'll grow a little bit from there. Mm-hmm. Hopefully next time we won't have technical issues at the beginning. Yeah. And that's just always happens though. Like, we had been talking for like 20 minutes in the studio before.
Totally fine.
As soon as it went live, for some reason, it started echoing. So thanks for coming back and giving us the benefit of the doubt there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we'll be next week, like I said, popcorn for dinner, and then after that, Aaron and Jim will be back for episode 5. I told your co-host that if there's one that comes up that you really want to talk about, feel free to join. Like, there's 3 is not that much of a difference than 2. So if you're like, damn, like episode 6 is the one I really want to talk about, but that just I was just unlucky that Aaron got that number in the
gotcha.
Whatever, then you can join. That's fine.
Problem is, I want to talk about them all.
I know. That's why I'm glad I don't have to choose.
Yep.
But that's the other side of that, is that they are all good, so you don't have to feel too bad about missing one here or there.
True.
Anything else you want to promote? Like, just plug before we go?
No, I mean, just if you aren't a listener to our podcast and you have some free ear time, check out Waffle Potty, PODDY. Nothing gross. Check it out on Apple or wherever. Yeah.
And thanks for doing this. Like I said, offline, like I really appreciate you guys stepping up to do co-host, because I really wanted to. I was excited about this. I think that the excitement's going to build even more. And I'm not going to stream solo ever. Like, this is not a thing that's going to happen. So when you guys said that you would take weeks, like, that was awesome. I was really happy to hear about it. So
yeah, no problem, man. It's always good to talk.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys next week. I'll see you next week. Jim will see you a couple weeks in the future. Thanks for coming out, and we'll see you next time.